Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and today's unboxing of the Master Grade Infinite Justice Gundam comes to you courtesy of those fine folks over at Canadian Gundam. Canadian Gundam is your one-stop shop for all your Gunpla and Plamo needs here in North America. With a private warehouse option, regular restocks, and a vast catalog, they're going to have most anything you're looking for. When you're checking out that vast catalog and placing your next order, don't forget to use the promo code GUNPLANetwork to save 10% off. Starting off with the box, and this 2008 release is pretty standard for the line. I do have to say the little battles in the backgrounds are always fun to look at though. Having glimpses of the Strike Freedom, the Legend, a bunch of Goof Igniteds, and of course a Murasame are just nice little reminders of what else hails from Seed Destiny. Of course, we do get a nice big shot of the Infinite Justice cutting through a goof as well. Moving on to the side of the box, and we have a super close-up shot of the head jewel showing off the markings on it. Of course, you're really not going to be able to see that too well, but it is cool that it's there. We of course have the MRQ-17X Griffin 2 beam blades on the legs, probably the biggest selling point of this design. To help get those legs into good kicking poses though, we also have a unique hip system that'll allow for a little bit of leg extension, kind of like the high-grade Cosmic Era version. We see the Faith logo labeled in markings. This is likely a dry transfer, as this kit's going to have both dry transfer and sticker decals. Bandai makes a somewhat strange point to show off the backpack connection and the knee bend. For a suit that kicks, I can kind of understand the knee bend, I guess, but still a little strange to throw them in there. Of course, we have to see Athrun go up against Shin, with the Destiny facing off against the Infinite Justice, so if you have the Master Grade Destiny, you can put them on a shelf together and they look pretty complementary. We also get to see how the finished kit stands up next to the small mountain of runners that make it up. This photo also goes to show how many of the accessories you can pile on this kit at once, and just how few things will be left over. Along the other side, we're treated to a closer look at some of the weapons, such as the MO2G Super Locutor Beam Sabers connected at the hilt for double-bladed configuration. Under that, we have the Carry Shields RQM55 Shining Edge Beam Boomerang that can also be used as a beam saber, and the EEQ8 Grapple Stinger. Bleh. To the right, we have the beam effect for the energy shield, which looks very nice, and I'm sure it will look very nice once it's on the actual model kit. Of course, we get to see a good shot of the front and the back of the Infinite Justice looking very clean and very similar to that of the high-grade Cosmic Era version that came out not too long ago that we also reviewed. Lastly, we can't forget about the Fatum 01 backpack unit and its gimmicks. It looks like the housing for the engines is going to slide back. The wings are tied to some kind of mechanism that automatically moves them when the sides are pulled out. And we even have a little up and down motion for more aggressive flying poses. It is nice to see that at least the backpack is going to be considerably more complex than its high-grade Cosmic Era counterpart that is almost 10 years newer. Now, of course, we can't talk about the ZGMF-X19A Infinite Justice Gundam without looking at its predecessor in the ZGMF-X09A Justice Gundam from Gundam Seed. Pretty much all of Athrun's mobile suits will share a similar visual style in terms of their color scheme, and usually their head sculpts are at least vaguely similar, with a single V-fin and then the large commander antenna kind of being a camera as well. Now, the Infinite Justice is a pretty big jump from just the base Justice Gundam, as the original Justice was just kind of an all-around basic general mobile suit. The Fatum unit helped it fly in the atmosphere, but it really couldn't fly under its own volition. The Fatum unit had cannons, but that was pretty much it. It didn't have any melee weaponry of its own, because why would it? While the Justice could fly around on it, it could also detach and be used separately, leaving the Justice with its beam sabers, its beam rifle, and its shield. Of course, the two beam boomerangs on its shoulders as well. The Infinite Justice takes that melee idea to the extreme, pretty much just leaving the only ranged weapons either on the Fatum or in the beam rifle, and loading every type of beam weapon you can think of on the body for melee combat. So of course we have the MO2G Super Lacerta beam sabers on the hips. Those are two individual beam sabers that can be connected at the hilt for double-bladed action if you decide to do so. We also have the Carry Shield, which has multiple melee weapons within it as well, such as the EEQ-8 Grapple Stinger that we looked at earlier, as well as the RQM-55 Shining Edge Beam Boomerang, which is the successor to the beam boomerangs from the Justice Gundam. We also have the MRQ-15A Griffin beam blades in the legs, which are the most striking and somewhat different on this kit. This kind of almost harkens back to the Aegis and its weird foot blades, but this seems slightly more usable. Now, outside of that, the Fatum unit also has its own beam sabers, such as the MA-MO2S Preface Lacerta beam sabers. Then we also have an MA-MO2G Super Lacerta beam saber as well, which is on the nose of the Fatum unit. So when it's separate, it has a nose that juts out. It has a big yellow blade-looking thingy that also has its own kind of beam saber type weapon on it. Now, of course, you also have the MA-M1911 High Energy Beam Rifle, which is an improved version of the Lupus beam rifle from the Justice. Not a huge selling point, but it is cool that it's here in case you don't want to use the beam sabers themselves, because they're in model kit form a little lanky, long, and kind of hard to pose around if you have a pretty busy shelf. The Justice itself didn't really survive Gundam Seed, but the Infinite Justice, on the other hand, does. It doesn't really do much outside of that, but it is there at the end, and since we don't have any follow-up as of yet, we don't know what happens to it. We don't know if Athrun keeps it and continues to fight for Orb. At least in the special edition, he has an Orb uniform on. I don't think he has a Zaft uniform, so we'll see in that movie that comes out later whether or not he's still piloting it or if it's still around. Now, as we take a look at the plastic, we're of course going to start with the A plate. This is the only plate, of course, that is going to be made up of different colors of plastic, such as the clear for all the cameras and such. We have the dark maroon, we have the yellow, and of course the green. I do wish this green was a little brighter so it could stand out more as an accent piece, much like the high-grade Cosmic Era version, but it's not all that bad and it blends fairly well with the dark maroon color that the Infinite Justice is made up of. On the B plate we get more of that maroon color, and this is mostly for the Fatum unit. There's a nice amount of surface detail and internal detail, so if you wanted to either panel line this or take a wash to it, it would look really, really good, even if you're not going to see all of it since some of this is partially internal. On the C plate, we have quite a bit of the accent white color, which looks like it's mostly going to be the accessories, the beam rifle, the shield, some of the feet, and of course the little pilot figures of Athrun in both a sitting and standing position. So if you want to paint them, you can, but still in the 1/100 scale, they are pretty small. As we look at the D plate, there are actually two identical plates that are once again in white, but these are for either side of the kit, so mostly the legs, the beam sabers, things of that nature, and they are 100% identical. Moving on to the D plate, and this is the slightly brighter reddish color, reddish pink if you will, and it looks really good. I think this is a nice contrast between what we see with the dark maroon color, and while I think it could be maybe a little bit redder, it's still not bad and it matches the idea of the kit. Next we have the F plates, which are two identical plates once again that are going to be either side. This is the same kind of light red, reddish pink color that is going to make up quite a bit of the kit. A lot of the legs, the shoulders, things of that nature. Of course, we also have the G plate, which is mostly in black and is going to be the Fatum unit's wings in the backpack portion. Then if we go ahead and move on to the H plate, we see more of the Fatum unit, part of the chest as well, and we see those little engines for the Fatum, which have a lot of detail in tiny, tiny pieces, but you're really not going to see them, so it is a little bit of a shame that all that nice details there, but of course that's master grades for you. There's detail kind of everywhere. As we move into the I plate, we have a slightly different color. It's not as deep as the black of the last two plates. It's more of a just kind of standard gray. It's not metallic silver or anything like that, but we get some nice detail on the beam rifle, a lot of little vents, things of that nature. Now on to the next plate, we have a nice bit of silver here. Now this isn't super shiny silver, but it is pretty similar to what we had on the high-grade Cosmic era, so it is nice to see that a lot of the inner frame is going to stand out against the kit's other grays and blacks, and of course those maroon colors. Now as we move into the K plates, two identical plates once again. They make up more of the inner frame, and they look really nice. There's a lot of nice internal details, so if you did want to leave some parts off, I don't know that a wash would look great on something like this. Since it is this silvery plastic, I'm not sure how well it would take that. Now into the L plate, we have a slightly brighter silver for all the pieces on the Fatum unit, and of course the little blades for the shield. Looks pretty nice. I'm glad they have different colors of silver for this as well. We of course have the PC joint. Nothing really big to write home about here, but it is kind of the same silver color as the internal frame. We have the beam sabers, which I have to say all of the beam blades on this look phenomenal, not just in sculpt, but they also have that Seed Destiny sparkly material in it, and they really shine in this light here. So I'm hoping they shine very well on the kit, but we'll have to see once we get it all built and posed up. Now, of course, we have a bendable wire for the little anchor thing that comes out of the shield, but I do have to say this version of the beam shield is phenomenal. It's really nice. I actually want to pose the kit with this. Well, as long as it's not in the way. We also have the sticker sheets. We have the eyes, a couple of cameras, the dry transfers, which look really nice. I'm very excited to put those on there. And there's quite a few of them, actually. I'm a little surprised. It's not a bunch, of course, but it is enough that you can cover a good portion of the kit with them. We also have the manual. Looks pretty standard, pretty solid looking. Nothing really to write home about. It's a fairly standard manual. Going into the build, there are a few things I'm going to keep my eye out on. Mostly the gimmicks, of course, but there's a few things on the actual kit itself in terms of like surface detailing that I'll look out for. One thing I do have to say, just after looking at the plates, I am a little disappointed that green doesn't pop as much. Now, of course, you can go back and paint it, but straight out of box, it would have been nice to have seen something like the high grade, where that is a very prominent accent point. It's a fairly small amount of plastic, so I can understand why it's kind of more toned down. It matches the overall kind of tone of the suit, as a lot of these colors are fairly muted. But it would have still been nice to have had that pop just a little bit more, in my opinion. The shield, I think, is going to be interesting. That's something I left off of the high grade when posing it in my collection. I think the beam effect on this is really cool, and I really want to pose it with that, but it's just really big, so I don't know if we're going to be able to move it around too well. I'll see once I get it built, but I'm really hoping that there's a little bit more thought put into that so that you can use it. The little anchor thingy that comes out of the shield, I'm really not holding out a lot of hope for. I am interested to see if the thicker cable will work better. It's not something I intend to really pose it around with, but it is something I'm hoping that is executed a little better here than the high grade. With comparing a 2008 master grade to like a 2020 high grade, there are some things to consider, of course. The surface detail on a master grade is going to be better, but for a design like this that's pretty minimalistic, they did have to go in and probably add a little bit. You get a little bit more on the shoulders, a little bit in the side skirts and skirt armor in general. But generally, this is a fairly basic looking kit in terms of surface detail, which may not be everyone's cup of tea. I dig it. I think it's clean looking, I think it's sharp, but if you want a lot of surface detail, this might be something for you to scribe. When looking at the runners, we saw that, well, there's a lot of cool internal detail. A lot of the surface armor has little notches and stuff, but it's not really elaborate, which, you know, it's neither here nor there. A personal preference of mine I like, but to each their own. In terms of the build, I do really look forward to seeing how these different types of plastics mesh together, the different colors of silver and gray, the different colors of the dark maroon to the kind of lightish red of the main armor, and of course all the white accent pieces on those. All of the beam blades, of course, I'm holding out a lot of hope for, because generally speaking, those are the biggest selling point of the kit, so I'm hoping I can get some cool kick poses out of it, kind of like I did with the high grade. Of course, this being a master grade, it's a lot bigger, it's a lot heavier, so we'll see, but generally speaking, from the promotional images and looking at the runners, it looks like they're going to have a fairly similar range of articulation and movement, and those hip gimmicks help with the kicks, so fingers crossed. I do think the feet on this will probably play a little better than the high grade, just because they're angled and sharp, like for whatever reason all of the Seed Destiny kits. I don't know why the Seed Destiny line had to have these sharp angular feet, but I do like it. I think it is cool looking and definitely helps with the dynamic look of the suit. But of course, if you've built it, in the comments down below, let me know what to look out for. Should I be careful on certain parts, or is this a pretty straightforward build? If you haven't built it and you're thinking about buying it, put any questions down below and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. As always, friends, I've been the Spicer here for the Gunpla Network. Please stay safe and keep on building.